Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. So yeah, it's me, Patrick, with, yes, another video covering Chapter 11 of Kory Floyd's best-selling political thriller, Interpersonal Communication. In a world where people have to communicate, one man wrote a book about how to communicate. Interpersonal Communication, the movie, coming to theaters soon. No, just kidding. No movie coming, so you'll have to, read. And you could also watch this video. It will be helpful. I promise. For this second of two videos about this chapter, we'll be discussing how we can manage interpersonal conflict. First, we'll talk about problematic behaviors in conflict, and then we'll discuss some strategies for handling conflict. First, there are 4 problematic behaviors that we often see during conflict. John Gottman, a noted psychologist, has named these behaviors the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. That sounds pretty dark, but hey, I get it. These are some pretty destructive behaviors, so let's try to get post-apocalyptic by learning more about them. Yeah? Yeah? No? All right. The first of the behaviors is criticism. This is when a person expresses complaints about another person, usually not focusing on actions or behaviors, but rather on the personality or the character of the other person. Ooh, yikes! We can't really change our personality or our character that easily, so these kinds of attacks are super harmful if you want to remain in a relationship with that person. One of the ways that criticism emerges is something called gunny sacking. That's when we have saved up all of our criticism and decide to unleash them at the same time. Double yikes! Bringing up past grievances in one instance is overwhelming and won't accomplish much. The second of the behaviors is called contempt. This is when we express insults or attacks on another person, usually on their self-worth, basically name-calling, mocking, using sarcasm, and even non-verbal communication like rolling your eyes. Dude, don't roll your eyes. Boo! Don't do it! The third of the behaviors is called defensiveness. Maybe if somebody is criticizing and showing you contempt, you might become defensive. What? That's crazy! No, it's pretty common. We will often start to paint ourselves as the injured party. And we may be the injured party, but rarely is only one person at fault in any conflict. And the final behavior is called stonewalling. This is what happens when you handle conflict by building a literal wall, made out of stones, around you so that you don't have to engage in the conflict. Okay, it's not a literal wall, but it is a figurative wall. It's what happens when one person in a conflict just withdraws entirely and ends communication. This might happen when a person feels overwhelmed by the conflict. I'm sure we've all experienced this at some point. I'm about to go into some conflict management strategies, but before that, I want to say a word about these 4 horsemen. Why are they called horsemen? Why can't women ride horses? Shouldn't it be horse people or horse persons? Ah, so sexist. But that's not what I meant to say. Sorry, I got sidetracked by the patriarchy. What I meant to say is that these 4 problematic behaviors are common, and pretty much everybody has engaged in them at one point or another. Adopting these behaviors from time to time doesn't make us a bad person. It doesn't even make us bad communicators. It simply makes us, well, human. And I'd much rather be a human than a robot or a werewolf. No offense to my robot and werewolf friends, of course. But we shouldn't be blamed for being human. Go easy on yourself the next time one of these horse people pops up in your life. Okay, I didn't realize it, but this video is going to be another long one, so pause. Take a break. I'm going to drink some water. You can pause and come back later. That hits the spot. Okay, we're back. Let's move on to some conflict management strategies. These strategies are competing, avoiding, accommodating, compromising, and collaborating. First, competing is when you see a conflict as a game or some kind of battle to be won. Generally, this isn't a healthy way to approach conflict, but it might be useful when there truly is only one outcome available, such as When you're going for a scholarship and there's only one scholarship and your friend also wants that scholarship. But, in that example, that's not really interpersonal conflict. Those people probably aren't actively fighting with each other, unless one is asking the other to step aside. So, yeah, I can't think of a lot of examples of healthy competition as a conflict resolution style. Next, we have avoiding. This is when there's a conflict and both people in the conflict just try to avoid it. That sounds a bit like stonewalling, but actually what's happening is you're just not even doing anything about the conflict. Much like competing, I can't think of many times where this is a good conflict management style, in the long term at least. I think in the short term it can work if you return to the conflict at a later time. So, for example, you're out with friends and you and your romantic partner start arguing about something. You might decide to just step away from that conversation. It's just not the right setting for that level of intensity, The next type of conflict management is called accommodating. This is kind of like avoiding, but instead of both parties just walking away from the conflict, you just give in and let the other person win the argument. Again, this isn't a great style of conflict management because you become the loser. And nobody wants to lose a lot over time. This can take a toll on your relationship if you are accommodating a lot. I think that if there is something you truly don't care about, for example, your friend wants to eat at a taco place and you want to eat at a sandwich place, but you really don't care that much, you might accommodate your friend because they seem to care a lot. And it's, Tuesday. Taco Tuesday, am I right? I'm right, of course. So those first three types of conflict management are less than ideal. The next two are generally better because they involve working together. The first of these two is called compromising. When you compromise, you give something up and the other person gives something up. That is, you both lose something, but it's in the name of some higher purpose. This is probably the most common type of healthy conflict management, but it's still not the ideal. In my mind, the ideal type of conflict management is collaborating. That's where both parties work together to come to a solution where neither of them lose anything. Therefore, they both, quote-unquote, win the conflict. I hate the terms winning and losing when it comes to conflict, but sometimes these easy metaphors are the best way to explain it. Now, a lot of the time, people seem to mix up compromising and collaborating. They seem really similar. The difference is that with compromising, you both give something up to resolve your conflict. But with collaboration, you find a way where nobody has to give anything up. You both leave the situation satisfied that you got everything you wanted. So why don't people just collaborate all of the time? Why is compromise more common? Well, that's the other difference between compromise and collaboration. Collaboration is really hard, and sometimes maybe even impossible within a conflict, whereas compromise can almost always be achieved. Even if you do try to collaborate, it's going to take a lot more time to get there. And sometimes you don't have the time or the energy to go through a true collaboration. Well, let's look at these. Let's look how these would look in a real-world situation. Let's say that you're a teenager. I know many of you aren't, but take a trip in the Wayback Machine with me for a minute. You and your sibling, let's say your sister, both want a car. Your parents have been super generous and said they have $5,000 to give you and your sister to get a car. They told you to figure it out. Yay, parents! If you used competing, you would see this as a competition. One of you will get the $5,000 and get your car, and the other will get nothing. If you use avoiding, neither of you would do anything about it. That $5,000 would just sit there, and neither of you would have a car. If you used accommodating, you would give in and just say to your sister, oh, you have the car. I'll be fine taking the bus. If you used compromising, you might come up with many possible solutions. One of them might be that you buy one car together, and one of you gets to drive it half the time, and the other gets to drive it half the time. This would be a compromise because the both of you want a car full-time. But you'll give in and just get the car part of the time. But what about collaborating? Again, there might be a lot of ways to collaborate. If you were both okay with a really, really cheap car, and I mean $5,000 is already pretty cheap, but there are some really cheap older cars out there, you could split the money. Each of you takes $2,500 and gets yourself a really inexpensive car. Another solution might be to work together to do some fundraising to raise another $5,000 so that each of you can have a $5,000 car. And of course, there are other solutions to be had where nobody would have to lose. Aww, collaboration, isn't it nice? On page 367 of our textbook, there's a great diagram of these strategies, and it breaks them into your concern for others juxtaposed with your concern for yourself. I think it's a good idea to try to balance these out, in my estimation. In most cases, you don't want to go too far in one direction or the other. Okay, this was a long video. My bad. I hope it was helpful, though, and I hope you are able to use some of the conflict concepts to go forth and rid yourself of conflict. Or at least, get better at it. Have a great day!